I hope you like my wallpaper. This reminds me when we're working too many hours in a day, that there's more to life than the day job. The story behind it is actually it's not about a sailboard. It's the fact that I was actually sitting with a beer in my hand on the back of a 34-foot yacht, bobbing up and down at the time I took the photo. Back to the real stuff. The business case for removing your perimeter, or as it probably should be subtitled, why retaining your hardened perimeter leaves you more vulnerable to the bad guys. And it's one of those strange things that when we started talking about this in 2002 now, 2002, 2003, most people said we were mad and that you couldn't do this in a corporate environment. The more and more we've gone on, people have realised that actually what Jericho has been talking about for the last 3-4 years is not only quite sane, but actually is essential for the future of computing globally. So what I'm going to address in the keynote this morning is through introductions, why there's a shift, what are the threats versus the business opportunities, a little quick look at who's doing it and why, how we need to get to where we need to be. So, yes, my full-time paid job is I'm Chief Security Officer for ICI, large chemical company. The unpaid nighttime job is as a member of the board for the Jericho Forum. If you haven't come across the Jericho Forum, the web references are at the end at www.jerichoforum.org. Basically, there to drive the issues around deperimeterization. Try saying that after a few years. Basically, the walls are falling, if they haven't already, for your company that you work for. And what are we going to do about it? Because 4 years ago, as a Chief Security Officer, a number of us were sitting around after conferences like this one in the bar, complaining that all that came to our door, the salesmen were busy knocking on our doors day after day, trying to sell us bigger deep packet inspection firewalls. My deep packet inspection firewall goes bigger and deeper than his deep packet inspection firewall, and guess what? My deep packet inspection firewall will run at wire speed rather than his, who won't quite run at wire speed, and etc., etc., etc. And we got to the point that we were saying, yes, but that's not what our businesses want us to buy. That is not what our businesses are asking us to do. Everything that the Jericho Forum produces is open source. So you can go to the website, you can pull all the information, you can rebadge it, you can use it within your organisation. I know of one organisation who is not a Jericho Forum member, who took what we termed the 11 commandments, how to design a secure deperimeterized system. They took the 11 commandments, which is on 2 sides of A4, and they have put it in the cube of every single developer they have. Free. No charge. Go use it. In terms of who's playing, in Jericho Forum, you will notice a few names sitting up there. So let's talk about how we got to where we are today. There's been a lot of talk about computing history, especially, I don't know what it's been like over here in Austria, but certainly there's been a lot of coverage on the BBC because it's the 60th anniversary last week of the invention of the transistor. So there was an awful lot of coverage in the press, on the television. And obviously, if you saw the original transistor, which is about the size of my fist, And now we put how many million on a chip? Horrendous, isn't it? And of course they were interviewing Gordon Moore, and we all know about Moore's law. But I'd like to give you an alternative history of computing this morning, starting from no connectivity to where we are today. So here we are, here's my connectivity and my time axis. And here's where we started. So we had standalone computing. Hopefully some of you here are old enough to remember standalone computing, where we had the mainframe was God. That was it. We only had mainframes, and we had twisted wire connections to green screens, which just displayed good old ASCII characters, and that was it. So mainframes, minis, and then along came the PC. But the PC was essentially the same thing, except in a standalone box. Then, of course, as everyone knows, the PC really kicked off today's computing revolution, which is all of a sudden the business got hold of the PC rather than the computing department, and they started to connect them. So we had local area networks, but just connecting 3, 4, 5 PCs, because that's all you could afford at the end of the day. I think when I bought my first PC for Auntie, if you can remember Franti, long gone as a corporation. It cost £2,500 in 1988, sorry. 1988, £2,000, so a small fortune. And we paid extra to get 64K of memory. And it had twin floppies, didn't have a hard disk. Come a long way since then. Didn't have a network connection because really network connections didn't exist. Along came Ethernet. Ethernet's got an awful lot to answer for, good and bad. We'll talk about that probably in a minute. Then we connected LANs, and we started to look at what protocols we could actually start getting these systems to talk on. And we wanted to connect our various systems that were around at the time. And so we took lowest common denominator protocols. So SMTP, FTP, Telnet. Guess what? 25, 27 years later, we're still using those same protocols as the basis for all our computing. Which is pretty scary. I think if you talk to John Postel, who was the father of SMTP, 27 years old SMTP is, and said, do you expect this to be around in 10 years' time? He'd say, oh no, this is just a demonstration program. We expect it to be superseded by something much better. Because, hey, this doesn't have authentication, non-repudiation, encryption, security, or anything else built into it. But guess what? 27 years later, what is the basis of internet email? Yeah, that wonderful protocol. And I'm sure on that basis he's quite proud. But, why does phishing work so easily? Well, because everyone uses SMTP. We started connecting internet email. 1992, I was working at a European organisation called JET, Joint European Tourists. We were mimicking what the sun does. So we had a little nuclear fusion reactor that went from cold to 150 million degrees centigrade in 10 seconds. Which is hot, because that's 2.5 times hotter than the centre of the sun. And the scientists came to us and said, we want to collaborate with these other people, our other scientists around Europe. And we said, yeah, sure, okay, right, we'll sort of look at it for you. And we went and got a 32K internet pipe, which cost us an awful lot of money. And we gave them email. And that was fairly straightforward. And then, of course, what did they want? Well, they wanted Telnet. And they wanted to transfer these large files that they were generating out of every time they fired the reactor up, of all these experimental results to their colleagues around Europe. So we put in an FTP server for them. And then they said there's this new thing called the web. And we'd like to put up a web server so that we can share our results with the world, because it's a non-military open experiment. And we sort of looked at this. And we went, let's think about this. Experimental nuclear fusion reactor one end, the internet the other. Not a good idea. To cut a long story short, we popped off to CERN to see Tim Berners-Lee and said, look, this web thing that you're doing over here, how do we do it? So we put up a website and we put an experiment, we took some experimental software which later became Microsoft's web server, written by Edinburgh University, who didn't realise its heritage. And we put up a web server and yeah, we connected this experiment to nuclear fusion. We had to write our own firewalls, didn't exist at the time. So Sun 5 and the TCP/IP toolkit were our original firewalls. So that's where we were. But then what happened? Business got hold of it, didn't it? So we have these external collaborations, these private collaborations going. We started putting leased lines in. And why? Because business saw the value of being able to communicate. Business started to see this fledgling digital economy. Business didn't understand that with that connectivity, just the same as connecting an experimental nuclear fusion reactor to the internet, there was risk. And I would argue that that's where the perimeter started to break down. The instant you started to make those external connections, that is where your perimeter started to break down. What do we have? Since then, external working, of course nowadays mainly VPN based. And here's where we are today. Limited internet-based collaboration. I say limited because I think there's an awful long way to go. What are the drivers? Drivers for business, outsourcing, offshoring, all that good stuff. What's coming? Consumerization, the drive to use cheap consumer-based IP devices in business. Because business quite rightly says, actually, why should I pay for a device when actually what you're already carrying with you out of personal choice and you're already paying for is generally an end device that is a lot more powerful than what I'm going to give you. The days of you having a PC on your corporate desk that is way more powerful than anything you could afford at home has long gone. Most people have more computing power at home than they do on their office desk. What's coming? Full internet-based collaboration, very fast. Drivers, business to business, business to consumer, integration, flexibility, mergers and acquisitions. We're doing so many mergers and acquisitions today. ICI was bought a couple of weeks ago. So I shall be working for Axo Nobel come January the 2nd. That's a fact of life. In the last 2 years, we've sold 2 parts of our business off, and then we've been acquired ourselves. Yes, January the 2nd, we raised the challenge because we're selling off part of the ICI business as part of Axo Nobel. It's going to be sold off to Heinkel, and another bit is up for sale. So we're going to be doing 1 integration and 2 divestments next year. Should be interesting. It'll certainly keep my team busy. The reality is that that's business life for you. And the days of turning around and saying to business, actually it's going to take you a year to divest this business off because they're so tightly integrated into our network. It just isn't going to happen anymore. Business is not going to accept it. And ultimately, full deperimeterized working. Drivers, cost, flexibility, faster working, etc., etc., etc. So this is what you should be looking for in your businesses. The first key one is that actually your business legal border, your legal entity that is your business, bears no relationship anymore to where your electronic borders are. You have joint ventures, third parties, suppliers, all connecting to your network. All extending your network out into goodness knows where. You have people coming onto your, currently we're putting in an SAP system, so I have about 150 Accenture consultants sitting on my network. I have all sorts of other vendors who come in and sit on my network. People who connect to my network, the days of saying, this is my network, the only people who are connecting to it are full-time staff, went about 5 years back. If you talk to my friend Steve Whitlock at Boeing, who's the CSO at Boeing, he says, I now have more non-Boeing staff with accounts on my system than I do Boeing staff. That's the reality. The BBC, I was talking to the BBC the other night, the BBC, because of the way they make television programmes these days, have 4 times as many people on their network than they do actual BBC paid employees. Business demanding to directly interconnect to systems where business-to-business relationships exist. The day of saying we will only extend our network to you if we own 51% of the company are long gone. We expect good network connectivity. Distributed and shared applications, the amount of applications you now share to business partners, third parties, customers, goodness knows what. And then there's the applications that just bypass perimeter security. It's not only instant messaging that does a really good job of tunneling out of port 80. Business now writes them. We do business with Walmart. And Walmart have pushed a little protocol called AS2. Anyone using AS2 here? Couple. Yeah, absolutely. AS2 does a really good job of tunneling straight through port 80 to allow my ERP system inside what was once upon a time my crown jewels. Inside my system to tunnel straight out across to Walmart and connect to their ERP system. So what are the business requirements? Computing should work anywhere. That's what they expect. Operate under the Martini model. Remember the adverts? Anytime, any place, anywhere? Yeah, well it's any IP, anytime, anywhere. Martini model networking. It should be secure, it should be self-defending. More importantly, from a security point of view, it should be capable of identifying itself. It should be capable of identifying its user, have a defined level of trust, and have trust based on its environment. So in other words, if you're trying to connect to get some very important information, and the last login you had 10 minutes ago was in the office in London, when the same person logs on from an IP address in Russia, your systems probably should go, whoa, don't want to do that. But at the moment, we don't do it. Ultimately, it boils down to these two. Data needs to exist everywhere, and pervasive access is mandatory. Think about it. Ultimately, we should be concerned, I hope you've all been watching the fiasco of the British government over the last couple of days, 20 million personal records unencrypted on 2 CDs. I have to say, I have 3 children, my 3 children, and my wife will be on that CD somewhere. So as a British citizen, yes, am I worried? Absolutely. We should be concerned primarily with information loss, not the loss of the physical asset. At the end of the day, I'm not offering this as a challenge, but if you steal my PC, my hard disk is encrypted. We've had some very bright people pretending to steal one of these and then putting it through a set of forensics to try and get the data off it, and they have not succeeded. I'm pleased to say that that is not a challenge. No, if you can see it, notice the DEFCON sticker, think twice before connecting to this PC. But pervasive access is mandatory. Yeah? We should be worried about inappropriate access, not access itself. Access is a given in this day and age. As I said, if you want to go and get it, the Jericho Forum commandments, there are only 11 of them, 2 sides of A4. Jericho Forum website, take it, give it to your developers and say, follow these. We actually took voice over IP just as a total aside. I was doing the info security show in New York in September. And as a bit of fun, we took voice over IP and mapped it to the Jericho Forum commandments, and it failed on all 11 counts. It's horribly insecure, we all know that. But this is a great way of testing systems, implementations, protocols, whatever you like. So who's doing it? BP, number one on the London Stock Exchange, putting deperimeterization in practice. Currently, I'm told they have about 30,000 PCs who every single day connect to the raw internet as their main method of operating. If you walk into most BP offices in the world, you can connect your PC. Why? Because what they have on their desk is the internet. Not an intranet, not a BP LAN, it is the internet. So it doesn't matter whether their staff are connecting from home or connecting from the office, it's just the internet. ICI, set for big savings. We have, this is an old press release, we have signed a deal which is basically going to allow us to dump all our internet browsing locally off our LAN. Last thing if you look at your network, and I'm told I'm told we are a boringly normal corporate. 35% of your backbone WAN traffic is internet browsing. That's a fact. And that's pretty standard for every single corporation out there. And you'll find that 10% of that is Facebook, 10% of that is YouTube, and 5% of that is eBay. You wonder what your workers are really doing. But anyway, the reality is that if you can offload that off that very expensive WAN, you save yourself lots of money. So that's exactly what we're doing. Oh, and by the way, while we're doing that, we're extending the same security principles, because we're not throwing security away with letting them do that. We're actually giving them enhanced security for browsing the web, and we're extending that security so that when I'm sitting in a hotel with my PC connected, I get exactly the same security on my web browsing as I do when I'm in the office. So not only can't I go to playboy.com because it's a corporate PC, if I go to a malicious site accidentally, it will protect me incoming, and that will work whether I'm in-house or whether I'm in a hotel. And I don't have to VPN back into ICI to make that happen. KLM, anyone here from KLM or Air France? No? Okay. £2 million a year through laptop self-support. Remember what we were saying earlier about consumer devices? They're doing just that. They're going to remove their laptops off the network and give people allowances to buy their own. Why not? I need an in-computing device. I know best what actually I need to do my job every day. It might be that actually I don't do any kind of attachments, I don't do any kind of PowerPoint, all I do is receive text emails. So actually, I'm going to have a BlackBerry. It might be actually that 90% of what I do is Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint and Word and everything else, and therefore I need a PC. But I know what I need to do my job properly, so give me a PC allowance instead. Exactly what KLM are doing. So the future. Where's the future going? Many, and I would argue in most cases, network security perimeters are going to disappear. They're going rapidly. If you think about it properly, with the amount of holes you have punched in your corporate network perimeters, actually you don't really have a network perimeter anymore. Yes, it stops the script kiddies on the internet, it stops the automated programs, it stops the... We could argue over coffee of whether it stops denial of service attacks. Actually, a deperimeterized model works a lot better against denial of service attack. But so that's one for a debate over coffee. The reality is that your network has effectively gone. The only reason you're running a corporate WAN in 2007, 2008 is for quality of service. You want to guarantee the network performance within your private network. Don't be fooled into thinking you're doing it for security, because you're not. We talked about the drivers earlier. They already exist in your organisation, and it's already started. Your only decision as a security professional is how fast it's going to happen to you, how soon you're going to let it happen, and whether you want to control it. Because if you don't decide to control it, it will control you. You'll be forced into it. So the future challenges: data versus network. Remember what I was saying earlier about Ethernet being the thing that connected everything together, the lowest common denominator? That's been the problem. For 20 years, Ethernet has been the lowest common denominator connecting all these disparate systems together. And so this whole industry has grown up that we can do security at the network level. If you are anyone here from the States? Hey! Have you seen the wonderful Cisco ads on the television over there about the self-defending network? Cisco do some really, really wonderful glossy adverts. They don't show over here. I haven't seen them in Europe. But in America, they show them on primetime television alongside things like the Super Bowl and other bits and pieces. Fantastic ads. Cisco can protect the network. And it's this Cisco self-defending network concept. It's bullshit. Great marketing, don't get me wrong. Fantastic marketing, but it's wrong. Sure, you can get the network to give you better quality of service. Yes, you can keep the lumps out of the network so that the packets you want to get through better. Yes, you can put quality of service into your packets to make sure that your video and voice has priority over background replication for notes. Absolutely. But that isn't security. That's quality of service. Don't be fooled. The old adage of CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You know, again, another 20-year-old slogan that grew up because actually this was a very convenient acronym that spelt a three-letter American organization. It doesn't actually bear any relevance to security. Confidentiality and integrity, yes, security. Availability, quality of service. If you want more availability, you pay more money for it. If you want more availability, you put in 2 circuits rather than 1. You put in redundant WAN links rather than 1. You put in triplicate. You triangulate your data centers. It's money you throw at the problem. It's all down to quality of service. Quality of service is something you pay for. Security is something you design in. Ad hoc relationships. Talking earlier about mergers and acquisitions. But relationships are shorter. More ad hoc relationships are becoming the norm. The company that you merged yesterday is being sold off tomorrow. And of course, collaborators, competitors, and enemies. Our networks contain people we trust. Absolutely. But the problem is that we collaborate in one area of a business with a direct competitor in another. So we do business, for example, with DuPont. And we have joint ventures and other bits and pieces. In other areas, we are direct competitors. Talk to the military. The military even worse because they're talking about, obviously, collaboration, military collaborations going on in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and other bits and pieces. And of course, all the NATO collaborations. And if you think about it from a military point of view, in some places they've got Chinese and Russians sitting on the same command and control network as NATO soldiers. And so in one area they have to collaborate and share data, and in another area they're direct competitors. Look at the press about what the Chinese government are doing in terms of hacking at the moment, allegedly. We need to share. things with people we don't trust. That's the norm in tomorrow's world. So, here's the old site mindset versus the Jericho mindset. The old mindset was very much connections to the secure network. You terminate your VPN at your VPN concentrator at your border. Absolutely not. Connection straight to secure resources should be your new mindset. Connection level authentication, absolutely not. Protocol level authentication. We have to allow devices to talk inherently secure protocols from device to device, even from application to application. So it has no reliance whatsoever on the network or the intermediate steps that you might want to go through. Authentication to access the secure network. Well, does the secure network really exist anymore? Might in a few strange government circles, but not really. It's authentication to access individual secure resources. And secure tunnels from device to network connection point. Absolutely not. It's secure protocols from device directly to secure resources. It's not that different. It's just you have to change the mindset slightly. So how do we architect? Jericho is busy doing a bunch of work around what we're calling collaboration-oriented architectures, COA. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's the concept of architecting security for the extended business boundary. It's not a solution. The problem is that the security industry and the vendors out there, have you noticed how they conditioned us over 20 years of coming in and saying, you've got a problem. Oh, by the way, guess what? I've got the solution. So certainly when we started this game 3-4 years ago, we were going and talking at conferences like this and saying, we have got a problem. The solutions we need don't exist. Everyone's going, I can't cope with that. Because my own mindset over 20 years as a security professional is being told I've got a problem. Oh, by the way, pay me some money and I'll give you a solution. And Jericho was wandering around saying, look, we as an industry have got a problem. Actually, we don't have a solution yet. And what we want to do is get everyone to collaborate on what the solution should be. So it's not a solution, but it is a blueprint, if you like. It's about reducing complexity. If you make security simple, it works better. It's one of those funny things out there, that actually complex security doesn't work. Security really works when you can boil it down to really simple concepts. A, because, excluding this room, 99% of your staff within your organisation won't take complex security solutions on board. You have to give it to your staff really simply for them to understand what you want them to do from a security point of view. A lot of what we talk about as security professionals goes so way over their heads. And even when you think you've got it really simple, try it out on your 13-year-olds and see if they understand it, and they'll say, Dad, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. So you simplify it some more. You've got to get the messages really simple. Security works when it's simple. It doesn't work when it's complex. Go through American immigration at the moment, which is a real joke. I mean, you know, terrorist threat, global terrorist threat. So what are we going to do? We're going to beef up the border. You know, on the grounds that you only ever, if you're a terrorist, you're only ever going to come in through the legal channels. Stands to reason, doesn't it? So we beef up the border, and now, of course, when you walk in, what are you expected to do? Well, it's a photograph and it's your 2 index fingers. As if that's going to make a difference. But he doesn't have had delays to come into America. We've got to have business flexibility, we've got to have increased security, we've got to have multi-vendor outsourcing. This has got to work. This doesn't work. If you talk to our friends at Microsoft, Microsoft will tell you we are doing deperimeterization very openly. At the highest level in Redmond, they are talking to the Jericho Forum and they say, look, we're doing this stuff. And Jericho's answer is, yes, you're doing this stuff, fantastic. The trouble is, it's a Microsoft-only solution. It works when you are pervasively 100% Microsoft. And the problem is that it means it's not open and it doesn't work into all these other organizations. My industry, where is all the neat chemistry being done at the moment? It's in some of the leading universities in the world. Do I really want to put pre-patent information into a university environment? Let's think about this. But we have to, it's a business requirement. Are they going to be running Microsoft? Probably not. They're going to be running Linux, they're going to be running Sun, they're going to be running goodness knows what. You name it, they'll probably have it and be running it. I can't guarantee or mandate they're going to be running the latest version of Microsoft. This has to work in an expansive world. So how do we get from where we are today? First, everything you do as a security professional should be with the assumption that you do not have a secure network. How many people? We're putting a brand new SAP system in at the moment. And our SAP developers have come to us and said, we need to move some files. We'd like you to open up the front-end firewall to, guess what? FTP. And we sort of go, silly boys. Let's talk about this, shall we? Username, password, all data sent in clear. Not a good idea. Our standard response for people asking us for FTP is to tell them they can't have FTP, they can have TFTP instead. Why? Because what's worse than actually sending your username and password in clear? It's actually embedding that username and password in the operating system code for the next 20 years and never changing it. In the false assumption that somehow it's providing some kind of security. So start protecting the data. Put your data over PGP or even AES encrypted WinZip or whatever, and then use TFTP to actually do the transmission. Better still use SFTP. There are lots of alternatives, but for God's sake, don't use FTP. Because it provides some kind of false sense of security. Because I need a username and password, it's providing some kind of security. It isn't. Base all your technology and design assumptions on this revised paradigm. Start using deproprietary solutions today. So we have web protection for the entire corporation designed as a deproprietary solution. It will work just as well on my laptop in a hotel as it will on my laptop inside my corporation behind my semi-secure perimeter. If you design them properly for tomorrow, they will work just as well inside your secure perimeter today. And ultimately, what you have to do is talk to your developers, because it's their mindset you need to change. You need to get them to go to their vendors, their suppliers, and say, we're not accepting this unless this is secure. Because by the time it comes to you as the security professional, it's too late. They place the order, generally. So there are problems, obviously there are risks. Get it wrong, you expose the business. Absolutely. Benefits, you get increased levels, you get real security. The risk of not doing it, you add more and more layers, more band-aids, more sticking plasters into your network until you get to the point where you have to say the only way we're going to make this patient well again is actually take them back, take all that bandage and band-aids and everything else, and actually go and fix the root cause of what's actually causing the problem to this patient. You end up with simpler, less complex security. You end up with huge amounts of cost or an inability to manage, and if you do it properly, it's cheaper to run and easier to manage. You get a business advantage, and more importantly, you get this, you get flexible and adaptable solutions, which is what your business is expecting you to supply. As I said before, 3 options for you. You can resist it, you can let it happen to you, or you can leverage the change and maximum advantage. So, best practice, Some of the issues we still need to fix: pervasive authentication. And you need to authenticate people, systems, location, and companies. It's possible. My laptop, if I walk into a corporate office inside ICI, I lift the lid on the laptop and it connects on Wi-Fi. Nothing else. Lift the lid, type in the screensaver password, and it connects. Is it secure? Damn sure it's secure. Why? Because it's leveraging the user credentials and the machine credentials, and unless it has a valid pair, it won't fire up the tunnel. When they first showed it to me, I said, prove it. So they ran BBC Radio 2 streaming to my PC. And they went into Active Directory and they took the machine out of Active Directory. 3 seconds later, BBC Radio 2 stopped streaming. You can do a lot of this technology today, people just don't do it. Inherently secure systems, more importantly, inherently secure papers. There's a great Jericho paper on inherently secure protocols. I'd recommend you get it and read it. Background authentication at all stages. If you want to get your senior managers to hate you, get them to type in 16 passwords to access anything. You've got to do background authentication. It's got to happen transparently if the users are going to use it. Otherwise, what happens? They write those passwords and username down on little sticky yellow pieces of paper, which you can find underneath their keyboard. We all know it, because we've all seen it. Why? Because what we're giving them to do is too difficult. And in closing, ultimately, it's up to us, everybody in this room. If we don't start doing this stuff, it isn't going to happen in the timescales that our businesses need it. We have to stop designing and accepting insecure solutions. You have to design your systems to operate without a firewall. You might still want to run a firewall. Jericho was misquoted in the early days. Jericho wants to get rid of the firewall. Not true. Jericho wants to make large deep packet inspection perimeter firewalls redundant. Absolutely. Do you still need a firewall? Do I need a personal firewall on my Windows? Well, it's a Windows PC, so absolutely I need a personal firewall on my corporate PC. Do I need a firewall in front of my SAP system? Absolutely. It might be connecting to the internal network, but I don't trust my internal network. So I have a firewall between my internal network and my SAP system. And that says you're allowed to talk the essential SAP protocols through to these devices. Nothing else should be talking. And yes, we're going to find all those strange processes that they put in that are suddenly talking to our business. You know, the LPR printing, the SMT, they came to us with a wonderful request. They said, our systems need to talk email, just to be able to send email. So we said, fine, okay, that's okay. Tell us which ones. No, all of them. You have to be kidding. Tell us which is we don't know. So just assume all of them. I said, we're not going to just assume all of them. You're going to tell us which ones so that we can put those allowances into the firewall. Do you need a firewall at the front end of your crown jewels? Absolutely, in today's industry. Do you need them everywhere else in your organisation? Probably not. Demand secure and authenticated protocols. Demand open standards. So support collaboration. If you can't join us because your corporation won't let you, at least go and steal with pride everything off the Jericho Forum network. It's open, it's free, it's secure. Take it, use it within your organisations. And beware of interesting insecure solutions. So finally, if you want to take the bulk of this keynote and the pretty picture, it's again available free for you to take and use within your organisations on the Jericho Forum website. Web references there, and with that I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions. Stunned into silence. NAC is an interesting short-term solution that won't last more than a couple of years.
What about anti-data leakage?
Sorry? Anti-data leakage? Probably when it matures, it'll be a valuable technology. The reason I say NAC is irrelevant, I'll elaborate on it very slightly. So this is a personal opinion, not a Jericho opinion, although there is a paper on NAC out of Jericho. Is basically you need so much up-to-date network technology to do it. If you want to annoy someone who's implementing NAC within your system, and they say, what does the check do? What triggers the check is the question to ask them. And they say, oh yeah, well when I connect to your network. So when I plug it into your network port, and that's fine as long as I've got all latest, greatest Cisco kit or whoever's kit, or I connect my VPN connection to my VPN 3000 sitting at my border, which I'm not going to have anymore, by the way, a deeper and dry solution. So the question to ask is, what's going to trigger the check? Because when I'm sitting in a hotel, what infrastructure have they got? Where's my network connection being made? When I plug my network jack in, it's in the hotel. In my new paradigm, I'm then just going to be using secure protocols to talk straight into the middle of my organization. So what's going to trigger the NAC checking? It's not. You're never going to get that trigger to say, this machine now needs to be quarantined because the machine is actually doing the connection on a hotel network. So, yeah, it works beautifully in limited situations. The only place it actually works reasonably well is on a wireless network, an in-house wireless network. Because generally you're putting in new infrastructure. So you've got a base layer which probably supports it. And you've got a lot of strange machines coming in. So maybe just about feasible on wireless. On existing infrastructure, I mean, my network is 400 sites in 55 countries. And we probably have a 7-year cycle process on renewing that network infrastructure. So that probably means that 95% of my infrastructure currently won't support NAC. And the money to replace that, to get us all up to the same level? And why should I do it in one office when, hey, I can go down to the Philippines and connect there? Yeah, security is only as good as the weakest link. So.
My experience of pen testing, especially on the client side, I just realized that it's not really decreasing the complexity. Having a laptop that is self-protecting is adding so much third-party software that you don't know they will be working on your platform. Like you take one antivirus, you put it on Vista, blue, red screen. You put it on SP2, blue screen. So then you just go backwards in version, try to have everything hooked together, and then you just, in the end, not increasing your level of security, but you're adding flaws on it. Because this antivirus is using, I don't know what, outdated version of libzip, or I don't know what, the IPS, because you will need it in the end, because, I mean, your operating system is not ready from the technology to cope with that kind of usage, right? And you're just spending your time patching up, adding stuff, and nowadays, I mean, my problem is more in all these third-party softwares I had to have this self-defending laptop, because it can't do it by itself. And on the other hand, having this crappy network that prevents me to, I mean, just communicate, you know? This model works very well the day we will have IPv6 in the world. But when? That's the question. You will need VPN all the time because you are in an active network. So if someone wants to join you, how do you do? Instead of using Skype or...
I would agree with you from the point of IPv6. I mean, I'm in an interesting position that we run 5 legal Class Bs. So actually, I can take my borders down tomorrow because we're already legally addressed on everywhere inside ICI. Absolutely, there is a problem with how you deal with natting. I will agree with you. In terms of the amount of stuff you have on your PC, yeah, the worst case we found is someone who had 4 copies of different versions of antivirus on his machine. and he was wondering why his machine wasn't working that well. So my tech support people told me that one. The reality is that, yeah, you know, why do we need dual-core processors? Why? Because our machines now are spending 50% of their time, you know, running all the security software and all that overhead that's actually sitting on that machine. So from that point, you're absolutely right. If you actually start to simplify it, remember we talked about, you know, simplifying this stuff makes it work better, faster, simpler, and everything else. If you think about it, notwithstanding the people in this room, what does your normal corporate laptop need to do? Well, they need to do email, perhaps accessing a few resources, and they need to you know, do some web, and perhaps in the future some voice over IP, let's call it Skype, for the time being. So from that point of view, if you want to protect your corporate laptop, let's actually have a decent personal firewall that says, the only thing I'm going to allow in and out of this laptop is inherently secure protocols. So my email is coming in and out, but that's been washed at the front end by message labs. Yeah, so that's 100% guarantee, no malicious code. Yeah, 4 years, 100 million emails a year, we've had no malicious code out of message labs. Not meant to be a message labs advert, but it works. So my email comes in, secure protocol, notes over TLS, let's say in my case, to my remote PC. So I have a firewall that says, I will allow you to talk secure notes. I need to do web. Well, I've already got a service that cleans my web. It's effectively a message labs for the web. So no malicious code coming in returned via the web, whether I'm inside the organization or outside the organization. So I only allow a secure connection to my in-the-cloud service provider who's providing my web cleaning. So there's protocol number 2 that I'm allowing through. And then, what else do I need to do? Skype? Well, Skype is, we can argue about whether it's secure, but it's pretty good. So secure voice over IP, let's call it, is my third protocol I'm going to allow through my tunnel. But that's going to take 95% of what my users need to do. Anything else they need to do, I can probably front-end screen scrape onto an HTTPS service for them via the web. So now I've got 3 secure protocols running through my firewall, and that's it. How is anything malicious going to get into my PC?
So basically, if I understand the way it works, is you've been replacing a VPN, an IP-based VPN tunnel to an application-level VPN tunnel to somewhere. So you have some kind of per application VPN tunnel to somewhere. And my question is, what if it doesn't work? Because now the problem of people is, I can't fire up my VPN connection on the network I'm in, and you have the same problem, right? If you can't able to, like fire up your TLS connection to your web watching system, then you have no web.
Correct, absolutely, and which is why you need open and secure protocols. Because unless you operate with a set of standards that we all agree to, we're into this great fun at the moment, certainly we have with IPsec, which is every person's version of IPsec, from AT&T to Cisco to Checkpoint, is very slightly different. It doesn't work through people's firewalls and security and bits and pieces. So we have to agree some basic open protocols that everyone is going to use, which is half of what Jericho's around to drive some of these. But anyway, I've been given the red sign, so thank you very much indeed.